talk about the second PPP loan, or as they call it, the second draw on the PPP loan. So again, like we're going to talk about today, we're going to talk about the first draw, second draw, and then how to go about forgiveness. As a lot of you know, I wasn't a big fan of applying for forgiveness earlier. I always thought that there would be a simplified application, and that dropped just recently, and it is a lot easier. So I'll be touching on that. I'll share it with you guys, and then we'll walk through it really quick. And as we're going, I just want you to know this easy application is for loans under 150,000. So always keep that in the back of your mind as we're going forward. So as you know, at the end of the year, we got the new stimulus bill went into effect. Part of that was the Economic Aid Act, and part of that Economic Aid Act put out about another $280 billion for the PPP loan. Now, it's less than the first loan, and so what we're advising a lot of people to do that are talking to us and stuff like that, apply as soon as you can. I don't know how fast this money is going to run out. The deadline is, and I'll talk about it a little bit more, is going to be March 31st, and it says that the loan has to be funded, I guess, by March 31st. So we got to get on this real quick. I mean, I know from my bank, which is City National Bank, hasn't sent me the application to even apply yet. So I'm hoping by next week, most banks will be up and running. I know a lot of them are right now. And so my advice to you is if you're going to qualify for this and you're going to look for this loan, I would apply sooner rather than later. A couple of things on there. They opened up the loan, the second draw loan, as you can see on here. I got a laser pointer here, so I'm going to try that out. Right here, 501c6 organizations. I don't think it's going to affect most of us, but for the most part, they've expanded in little ways the PPP, the original PPP loan. They've added a little bit more organizations like the 501c6 organizations that could apply, and they've limited, you know, now the loans that we could get are no more than $2 million, and we're going to touch on that stuff as we go along. So this is going to apply to a lot of you. I know what, with regards to partnerships, I know under the original PPP loan, there was a lot of confusion as what happens when I have a partnership and then I have two separate or three separate partners under that, each with their own corporation. And I believe under the first PPP loan, what was happening is that the partnership would have to apply, and then each individual shareholder or partner would apply on their own under their own S corporation or as an individual. So the SBA, as part of this new one, has made clarifications on this. So now what's going to happen is we're going to have one PPP loan that will be under the partnership umbrella. And then for us, the partners under that partnership, we could include our self-employed income derived from that partnership up to the 100,000, much the same. So now instead of potentially 3 PPP loans, you know, partnership, S Corp 1, S Corp 2, we're going to have one PPP loan under the partnership, and the partner's salaries will be included in that up to that $100,000 compensation. So that's right here. Again, I think this is going to make it a lot easier for us as business owners, you know, to try to reconcile these PPP loans going forward. So I think that was a good change. Again, compensation for any owner of a business is going to be capped at the 100,000 annualized compensation. So the partnership is going to be really no different than that. So another big change with coming with the PPP loan, the new guidance is if we believe that we were entitled for a larger first draw PPP loan, we could always go back and ask our banks to amend that first loan and request additional funding. That additional funding is part of this $280 billion out there. So if you believe that you're entitled to more, or you were denied the first one, or you know any other things that came up, you can now reapply for that PPP loan. There's more money there for you. It would be considered a first draw PPP and not a second draw PPP. Again, the reasons that we might do that is we never got the loan the first time. We returned our money because we didn't think we needed it at that point, and then they ran out. So now we get to reapply for that money. So it's a good thing to note that if you believe you're entitled to more money, or you returned the money in full, or you didn't apply because you didn't think that you just needed the money at that time, you could go in there and apply now. So it's good to keep that in mind as you're going. So again, I don't think there's many of us that are going to be looking for additional funds or anything like that. But if you're one of those people, please keep it in mind. Go through your bank. The bank's going to submit the request electronically, as you can see. Again, for the first draw and second draw, March 31st is our drop deadline. And like I'm thinking it has to be at, sometime in February. You got to give the SBA time to get this all reconciled. Repayment. So first draw PPP provides that so long as the PPP borrower submits its forgiveness application date within 10 months of the covered period, you don't have to make any payments on this. And I know a couple of people emailed us on this very specific question. Sorry, I'm turning down my phone volume here. So how it works out is Steve gets his loan, let's call it April 1st. My covered period starts to run, and that covered period is the period of time that I have to spend that money on payroll and the other expenses. So whether if I select the 8-week period, I go May, June, that's my covered period, is April 1st through the June, or to June 1st. And then I have 10 months following that date in which I don't have to make payments. And then after that, I have to start making payments. So anytime after that 8-week period, within the next 10 months, I could apply for forgiveness. And that's what they're talking about. So I don't know very many people that are going to actually select the 8-week period. I think most of us, and I'm trying to figure out a reason why you'd want to do the 8-week period, but most of us are going to select that 24-week period. I guess if your business is going to sell and you need forgiveness of that loan as part of the loan conditioning or the funding of the new loan, you might select the 8-week period to try to get that taken care of. But for the most part, I think most of us are going to be doing that 24-week period, which is about 6 months. So if I got it in June, approximately 6 months out, it's October. 10 months from October would be about August of 2021. Sometime in between that October and August, I'm going to want to be submitting for my loan forgiveness, if that makes sense to you. So let's talk about loan forgiveness. Now, I know a lot of you have already applied, and a lot of people have already received their loan forgiveness. So great. So I apologize if this doesn't apply to you. But one of the big things that popped up was this new application for loan forgiveness. And I'm going to wish me luck. I'm going to try to share this with you, the loan application, so you can see it here. So here's the new application. It's form 3508. Oops, where'd it go? Sorry about that. It disappeared on me. So it's form 3508, came out January 19th, so just a couple days ago. Again, the big thing to note here is it's for PPP loans of 150,000 or less. And as you can see, this application itself is a total of 1 page. And it's pretty simple. Is it a first loan or is it the second loan that we're going to be using? So I'm assuming this is going to be the same application when we look for forgiveness on the second draw PPP loan. You're going to input your PPP loan number from the SBA, the PPP loan number from your bank, how much you originally received, when you received that money, because they got to calculate that 8 or 24-week period. And here's the two big ones right here, right? How many employees did I have at the time that I applied for the loan? And how many employees do I have now when I'm looking for forgiveness of that loan? Your covered period, again, this will either be 8 weeks from the date you received your loan or 24 weeks. I'm suggesting most people probably are going to use the 24 weeks. The only real thing that you have to check is if the borrower received a first draw PPP loan in excess of $2 million or more, you got to click here because obviously they want to know. They've already made it pretty clear that they're going to audit all loans over $2 million. So checking here is a sure indication that you're going to get audited. And the only two things that they're requesting right now are how much did you spend on your payroll? And then how much are you asking for forgiveness? So I'm assuming this asking for forgiveness for almost all of us is going to be the full amount of the PPP loan that we received. And so in my case, I'd put 93,300 here as the for payroll costs, because in that 24 weeks, I used it all on payroll. And then I would put 93,300 here. There's two places that you need to initial. So the first one is right here. The borrower has complied with all the requirements. So yes, we used it for eligible PPP loans. So you can't say, if you used it to buy a yacht, you're not going to be able to check this box. Your loan won't be forgiven. The information provided in the application is true and correct. So it's a basic statement. And then we're going to sign and date it. So this is the whole application for loans under 150,000, and why I was a big proponent of waiting, because I'm going to show you the other loan just as an example of how much more complex it could get. So if we don't qualify for the first form, then what we're going to have to do is fill out either the revised form 3508, which also came out on the 19th. And you can see all of a sudden the loan application is 2 pages, and there's like 3 or 4 pages worth of worksheets that you have to do. The other big difference is on this loan, the 3508 loan forgiveness program, is we also have to provide all the documentation to our bank with regards to how did we come up with our payroll costs, our mortgage interest. So remember my old red file where I was keeping all my receipts, right? Of everything that I had to submit in. If I don't use that first form, I'm gonna have all that stuff scanned in and uploaded to the banks. So like I say, if you have a loan under $150,000, it behooves us to go back and use the 3508 form. Now, again, if we have loans over $150,000, we won't be able to use the 3508, and we're going to be stuck with either the 3508. Sorry about that. Let me go back. So if we have loans under 150,000, we can use the 3508S, and if we're over $150,000, we have to use either the 3508, and in the government's typical wanting to make you laugh, you could use the 3508 easy form. Which, if you look at it, is not really easy. It's basically the same loan, right? Documents that we're going to need. We're going to have to provide them with our payroll costs. We're going to provide them with the mortgage interest, the 40% other expenses that we get to use. Again, we got a lot of disclosures that we're going to have to go through. And then, so the easy form is a 3-page application. It doesn't have as many worksheets as the other form. But again, if you're under 150,000, which I think probably 95% of us are, we're going to want to default back to the 3508S, check initial a couple boxes, put in our loan amount, how much we want forgiven, sign it, get it off to the bank. So that's where we're at on the loan applications. If you waited, great. Like I said, I waited. I was hoping for this because I'm a firm believer of the more documents you give somebody to look at, the more questions they potentially have. More questions they have, the more problems that could go wrong with your loan forgiveness application. So it's nice to know that we don't have to provide them with anything when we submit this. Now, we are required to keep all the documents. The SBA has come out and said that you need to hold on to all your documents in case the SBA has questions or they wish to audit these returns or these applications. So again, last day to receive, March 31st, 2021 on these loans that we're going to be doing. So first, let me step back. So first, we're going to talk about the forgiveness process, which we just did. Let's talk about now the second draw PPP loan. What I wanted to transition in is we do not have to apply for forgiveness of our first PPP loan before we start looking at applying for the second PPP loan. SBA has come out and made it pretty clear that, Steve, you have not applied for forgiveness at all, but you could still get the second loan. So you could have 2 loans actually out at the same time at this point. So that's what I wanted to transition into this new second draw PPP loan for us. Again, March 31st, this is our big date. So on the new PPP loan, the biggest thing is you got to apply for and receive. There's going to be a lot of questions. Oops. Let me go back. Where was I? There's going to be a lot of questions on the definition of the word receive the loan. And we're going to talk about that. You can't have more than 300 employees. And this is also looking at the affiliation rules. So if I have 5 corporations in which I'm all the owners on, aggregate, I can't have over 300 employees. And like I said, guidance is needed on the word receive, and whether the date is considered to be the date the SBA loan is approved. Is it the date the PPP note is executed? As you remember, most of us, when we got the PPP loan, we had to sign the promissory note with the bank. Is that going to be the date? Or is it once the money hits our bank account? And we just don't know right now. So we're waiting for guidance on this. I'm hoping it's the approval date, right? Because you're going to get approval date before you get the the note, or maybe we'll get our note first before we get the approval date. But we don't want it to be the date of disbursement, right? Because, if they're sitting there reviewing our application and it becomes April 1st and they, we're out, right? So we got to be really careful on this date of disbursement. I'm hoping for guidance in the next week or two. If you remember the first PPP loan, there was like 25 different guidance topics given to us. I expect, literally we've already been getting new updates 2 days after they've announced this stuff. So I expect to have guidance on this. It's going to be pretty important. The big thing to remember is March 31st. So get that application in as quick as possible if you need the money. So as there will be a gap in time between submission of a PPP loan application and disbursement date, every periodical I'm reading is we encourage everyone to apply as soon as possible. So I'll be applying as soon as my bank opens up. I encourage you to apply as soon as yours opens up. Loan terms. So a couple of little changes here. Again, the SBA is guaranteeing for the bank's purposes 100% of these loans. So the bank really isn't in any trouble. No collateral is required, much like the first loan. We don't have to sign and have a deed filed against our house securing this loan. We don't even have to give personal guarantees on these loans, which is nice. So it's just a loan out to the business. If your loan is not forgiven, the PPP loan round 2 is not forgiven, your worst case scenario is you're going to have to repay this, and the interest rate is 1%. So even if your loan isn't forgiven, I still think this is a great loan to have. 1% interest rate, I shouldn't say you'll never see it, but it's going to be awfully hard to find a business loan at 1% going forward. And the other change on this is, remember under the first PPP loan, when we first applied, the maturity date was 2 years, meaning we had 2 years in which to repay the PPP loan. That has been extended out to 5 years. So now we're going to have 5 years to repay this loan at 1%, which will be pretty nice to have. So who's entitled to this? So here we go. Businesses. That's the easiest way to say it. I don't know. They, if you look at the SBA's wording, they make it pretty complicated. So second draw loan is, if it's a business concern, that's an ongoing business. So that could be an S corporation, C corporation, partnership, LLC, independent contractors, right? So if you're self-employed, which is funny because they also put eligible self-employed individuals, which to me is synonymous with independent contractor, but it is the SBA. Sole proprietor, which is also synonymous with self-employed and independent contractor. And then some nonprofit organizations. Tribal business concerns, housing cooperatives, small agricultural cooperatives, and then the new one, the 501c6 organizations. Seems sort of intuitive. If you're going to get a second loan, you probably had to receive a first loan. So anybody that's received the first loan could get a second loan. If you didn't receive a first loan, you could get a first loan. Has used or will use. So this is it. So as I mentioned before, we do not have to have applied for or been given forgiveness to qualify for the second PPP loan. The criteria is, has the business used or will use the full amount of the first draw PPP loan on or before the expected date of the second draw. So for many of us, like my 24-week period expired in October, I have not sought forgiveness, but I have used the full amount prior to applying for the second loan. So unless you got this, your first PPP loan, and I don't think anybody has, if you got it maybe September or something like that, and you have not used it all because you haven't hit your full, 24-week period, I just don't see us not having used the stuff. But it's one of those criteria that you're going to have to investigate, and it's one that you're going to want to do on your business. So there is no right or wrong answers. It's all individually based. Again, no more than 300 employees. Don't worry about the North American Industry Classification Code. These are for specific industries, beginning with the number 72, and none of my clients are in that category. So again, you receive the first PPP loan, you've spent the money or will have spent it before you get this loan by March 31st, and then you don't have more than 300 employees. And then here's the big one. So this is the question that a lot of people are asking for. So that sounds pretty easy, but now the last criteria that we need to document is a reduction in our business compared to 2020 or 2019. So as you all know, it's supposed to be 25%. So when we're looking at it, they've given us multiple options on how to calculate this 25% reduction. The first one is pretty straightforward. The applicant had gross receipts during the first, second, third, or fourth quarter of 2020. So you could choose any quarter in 2020 and compare that to the same quarter in 2019. And if your revenue dropped more than 25% during any one of those 4 quarters compared to the previous year, you're entitled to the PPP loan. So what we're doing for our clients, and most of our clients, like I say, are medical professionals, dentists, that quarter typically is the second quarter, where, for dental offices, they were shut down. Compare that to 2019, if revenue's down 25%, you meet the 4th requirement for the PPP loan. But they give us other options. So, and I know this came up with at least 2 of my clients that had questions. Well, what as in we weren't in business all of 2019, or we started business, we bought the business in 2020. Can we get this PPP loan? And the answer is maybe. You like that answer, don't you? So here we go. If the applicant was not in business during the first or second quarter of 2019, so you bought your business July 1st of 2019, but was in business during the third and fourth quarters of 2019, the applicant had gross receipts during the first, second, third, and fourth quarter of 2020. So this is the key point. So we bought the business in July 1st of 2019. We have to be in business all of 2020, it sounds like. And then you could demonstrate, and so then the applicant had gross receipts in the first 4 quarters that demonstrate at least a 25% reduction from the applicant's gross receipts during the third or fourth quarter. So basically option 2 is I set up in the second half of 2019. I could look at either the third quarter or fourth quarter 2019 and compare either of those quarters versus any quarter in 2020. So obviously, if you started up your business, it could be really slow, third quarter 2019. So it may not behoove you. So maybe you take fourth quarter 2019 and you compare it versus second quarter 2020 and see if there's a gross receipts discrepancy of 25%. So you're gonna have to play around with your numbers, and looking at, quarter versus quarter, which one's gonna get you to that 25% number there. Does that make sense, hopefully? So option 3, if the applicant was not doing business during the first, second, or third quarter of 2019, but was in business fourth quarter of 19, the applicant had gross receipts first, second, third quarter, or fourth quarter of 2020 that demonstrated a 25% reduction. So now we're taking the 2019 fourth quarter and comparing it against any quarter in 2020 to see if we get the fourth quarter. So I think there was a lot of confusion on the first application that went out there is, how do I get the PPP loan if I wasn't in business in 2019? I have nothing to compare versus, so how do I show I was down 25%? And so they're trying to rectify that. The SBA in their interim rules, regulations and stuff like that, actually have examples under these. This was cut and paste directly from the SBA's website. And they have a couple examples under each one of these. I just cut out the examples for space saving purposes. So drawing still going forward, if the applicant was, and this happened to 2 of our clients. So if the applicant was not in business during 2019, I purchased my business February 1st of 2020, but was in operation on February 15th, 2020. So if you bought your business February 15th, 2020 or earlier, you're going to qualify for the second round of the PPP processing. Now, I'm not sure how, and I'm not sure if there's going to be clarifications that if I bought it on February 16th, you know, or March 1st. Currently, it appears that if you bought your business or took over your business or started up a business February 16th or after, you may not qualify for the second round of PPP or even the first loan, PPP loan. So here we go. February 15th or earlier, the applicant had gross receipts during the second, third, and fourth quarter of 2020. So you bought your business, you started up the business, you know, January, and it ran through the year. You could, you know, that demonstrate at least a 25% reduction from the gross receipts of the entity during the first quarter, which seems great, right? Like if I started at February 15th, or I didn't have any revenue January 1 through January 15th. Well, I get to compare the first quarter, which ends March 31st, versus either the second, third, or fourth quarter to see if there was a 25% reduction so that I could get this PPP loan going out there. So like I say, 25% reduction from the gross receipts of the entity during the first quarter. For example, applicant had gross receipts of $50,000 in the first quarter of 2020 and had gross receipts of $30,000 in the fourth quarter of 2020, demonstrated a 40% reduction. So you can see how the reduction goes. So, you know, they want to look at the first quarter. That's all right, I might have got that backwards a little earlier. First quarter, when there wasn't a pandemic, versus did my business suffer after the pandemic? So, but it's out there for businesses that may have purchased in February and weren't able to get that first loan. And I know I'm going to have questions on that, so I'll go back and look at the questions after this. It's just hard to do it while I'm doing the presentation. I know I have some clients that email questions, and we'll touch on those too. Gross receipts. So, you know, obviously I'm a tax attorney, and so when I first heard that gross receipts have to be down 25%, I was thinking, man, there's a lot of games that could be played. You know, if I'm a cash basis taxpayer, do I show my bank gross receipts based on my financials on the accrual basis? Do I, you know, how do I go about this? If I'm an accrual basis, can I show them cash basis? And they clarified this in their recent rules. So the Economic Aid Act does not define gross receipts, but we could find gross receipts defined in other areas of the law. IFR, which is the guidance, generally defines the term to include all revenue in whatever form received or accrued in accordance with PPP borrower's accounting method. So this last line, based on our accounting method, would seem to indicate that if I file my tax returns on the cash basis, I have to make my application based on the cash basis to show the 25% reduction. So we're not going to be able to flip back and forth between accrual and cash. If we're filing on the cash basis, our financials have to be on the cash basis. If our business files on the accrual, the accounting has to be on the accrual, and that seems pretty fair. From whatever source, including from the sale of products or services, if our business receives interest, dividends, or rents, so if we self-rent to our you know, royalties, fees, or commissions. And here's a good one: reduced by returns and allowances. So a lot of doctors, a lot of dentists have credits back to the insurance companies or to their patients. That will lower our gross receipts. Important to note, gross receipts do not include the first draw PPP loans. So when you're looking at your financials, if you're just adding up your bank statements to see how much revenue you collected in any given month, remember to back out that PPP loan because it's not counted as gross receipts for determining whether there's a 25% reduction. Of note, though, for a lot of our dental clients, the HHS grants that we received, local grants from Santa Ana or whatever city you might be in, state grants, that's all income to us as far as determining how much money we receive. So that could screw up a couple of your quarters if you got a lot of these grants in the same quarter, and that artificially inflates our revenue for going forward. Loan amount. So it's much the same as before. It's 2.5 months of our average payroll. The big difference here is we could select as the business owner which year we had the better payroll, 2019 or 2020. I'm assuming it's going to probably still be 2019 because a lot of us were closed for 2 or 3 months. But if for some reason your payroll in 2020 is higher than 2019, you may want to use that the 2029 or 2020 payroll to determine your 2.5 times average monthly payroll cost to get a larger PPP loan. Again, be cognizant, it's only the payroll up to the first 100,000, you know, for, you know, us, the business owners. So, and going forward. So I think you need to weigh it both ways. I know a lot of the big payroll companies, ADP, I'm a big fan of lately, Paychecks, you could ask them for your 940, you know, which is your annualized payroll tax return summarizing total payroll. Look at which year you paid the most on, select that year, divide by 12, multiply by 2.5. Now, before you do that multiplication by 2.5, remember we get to add in other things in there, health insurance that we're paying for our employees, the employer portion of the retirement contributions, things like that. Those rules have not changed from the first draw PPP that I am aware of at this time. So the same way you calculated it the first time, you're going to calculate it the second time. You're going to just choose, do you want to use 2019 or 2020's payroll in determining that amount? Okay. Application. So I know a lot of people, I guess a lot of dentists have Citibank, which I understand. So I have City National Bank. Every bank is going to probably have different criteria for what they want to see as far as documentations, as far as what they want to see for their loans. The law as it's currently put out there is as follows. Document requested to substantiate an applicant's payroll cost is generally the same. However, no additional documentation. This is important. So let's say I took my first loan out at City National Bank, and I say, City National Bank, I'm applying for the second loan. I want the exact same amount that I got the first time. No additional documentation to substantiate payroll costs will be required if the applicant used calendar year 2019 figures to determine this first draw loan amount, right? So we're going to use the same amount number, use calendar year 2000 figures to determine a second draw. So we're going to compare 19. We tell them we want the exact same amount. Use the 2019 payroll figures, and the lender for the applicant's second draw loan is the same. So basically, if I go back to the same bank, City National Bank, for a lot of you, Citibank, Bank of America, the current SBA guidelines, oops, sorry, I did it again. Current SBA guidelines are, I don't have to provide any documentation because you, the bank, already have all the documentation you need to make this loan. So I think it's going to streamline the process if we're not asking for $1 more. We go back and say, and use the exact same numbers. So again, if you're satisfied with the amount of money you got the first time, it should be really straightforward. No additional documentation required to justify your payroll costs. And you just go forward and submit it with the bank with the application. And again, the SBA even spelled it out. The reasoning is that the lender should have all the documents required already. So again, it should really streamline this process to get this second loan. For loans greater than $150,000, the borrower must also submit documentation adequate to establish that the applicant experienced a 25% reduction. Why this is important then is if the reading on this and the analysis that I'm getting from other practitioners out there is I'm applying for the exact same amount, the $93,300 I received initially, with the same bank using the same figures. I don't need to do anything else. I don't have to prove to the bank at the time I submit my application that my business suffered 25% reduction in income. That's the law as it's written. So literally I could just say, City National Bank, I want the $93,300. Here's my application. And Citibank should be able to fund that loan for me without me showing them any profit and loss statements, any tax returns, any bank statements. Now, I say that because that's what the SBA guidance is. Now, I know looking at a lot of these applications, see what Citibank and some of these other private lenders are saying is they want you to fill out, quarter by quarter analysis from 19 to 20. But what I'm telling you is the SBA is not requiring any additional documentation or any justification at this time when we're applying for the loan to show a 25% reduction. Again, every bank could have its own underwriting criteria because remember, the banks are the ones making the loan. the SBA is guaranteeing that loan. So the banks may want additional assurances that the SBA is not requiring at this time. So how are we doing on time? So we've got plenty of time. So warning. So this is my ultimate warning on this thing, and it's been highlighted throughout the SBA stuff. Borrowers of both the first draw and the second draw will again be required to certify that current economic uncertainty makes this loan request necessary to support the ongoing operations of the applicant. Again, current economic uncertainty makes this loan application necessary. So what they're looking at is, Steve, you're applying for this loan in January, the end of January 2021. Is your business suffering still? And I know a lot of us, we're not submitting our third and fourth quarter, financials, because we did pretty good in the third and fourth quarter. Our business is recovered. So the question when we're applying for this in 2021, is there still economic uncertainty in 2021 that justifies us getting this money from the government? And if there isn't, then we shouldn't be applying for these loans. Consistent with the SBA's previous issued guidance, borrowers should review the certification carefully and adequately document the borrower's specific circumstances and good faith. So here's how they're going to get us. Determination that at any time at the time of submitting the PPP loan application, the PPP loan is economically necessary, including taking into account the borrower's current level of business activity. So here again, if we were closed down, and for myself, the first quarter was abysmal. I think March was the worst March I've had in 20 years, it seems like. Our revenue was down 50% in March because of the pushing back of the thing. Uncertainty, business owners were hoarding money, because they had to keep their employees going. If I don't think that same situation could apply in 2020, where I have this huge economic uncertainty going forward into 2021, I should not apply for this loan. And I think there's going to be potential consequences if the SBA audits this and we don't document why we needed this loan. It's not like, here, just give me free $90,000, Steve, and you're on your merry way. Show us why you thought there might be economic uncertainty in this. And it could be, look, and I'm trying to think, because I haven't really given it a lot of thought. What could be economic uncertainty? Well, I'm in my 50s, and I've been pretty much told that the soonest I could get my vaccination would be 2029, somewhere down the road. I'm way down there. I'm in the last tier. I think I'm in the lowest priority, people out there. Unless one of you doctors happens to drop off a couple syringes with the vaccine, and I find them in my office. So maybe my argument for economic uncertainty is that I am still at risk of catching COVID. Right? I've never had COVID. I haven't been immunized. I'm seeing a lot of people. If I get COVID, I could be out of the office at minimum 10 to 14 days. And during that time, I'm going to have no production of income. And so I'm applying for this loan because I think there's the potential of economic uncertainty should I get sick. I'm just trying to think, how would you justify now, if your business has come back to full steam, what your economic uncertainty is? And so that's something that you as the business owner are going to have to sit down. You're going to want to document it in writing. Like I said, I'd put it in your annual minutes if you're keeping minutes, or make a special minute of the meeting that you had as the director of your business as to why we're applying for this loan. It's not that, hey, look, my car is going to break down, and I just needed this $93,000 because 1% is better than any loan I could get out on the open market. So we're going to have to document the economic uncertainty. And then again, taking into account the current business level of activities. And this one was on the first loan, and it's a little confusing. The availability of alternate sources of additional liquidity. So this would seem to say that, did Steve go out to City National Bank and say, is there a business line of credit available that I could use in case I can't operate my business for a certain period of time? This language was in the first loan too, or came back after the first loan was issued in those special IFRs. So it's a lot to think about. I mean, everything seems pretty easy. 300 employees, I could show in one quarter that I had a 25% reduction. I'm going to keep the same amount as I did the prior year. Here's my application. It's this one that the SBA put out there that has me a little on edge on whether we should be applying for this loan or not. Again, it's all about your current circumstances. So if your patient that you're seeing are at or equal to about the same level as before you've bounced back, is it really economic uncertainty? So that's something you as the business owner are going to really have to sit down and weigh. And I don't know what the answer is. Like I say, I'm trying to figure it out for myself, what economic uncertainty there might be. What I've come up with is I haven't got this vaccination yet. If I get it or my staff gets it, you know, we're going to be shut down for a while. And if we're shut down, we got no revenue coming in. And if there's no revenue coming in, I got economic uncertainty. So I think that's the biggest thing that I want you to draw on this thing. And then special thanks. Like I said, I always try to tell you where I get this stuff from. The National Law Review. If you don't follow them. Like I say, they put out the most comprehensive analysis of the PPP loan for free that I've seen out there. There's a lot of webinars that you have to pay $50 for to get, you know, the analysis, but the National Law Review is great. The Journal of Accountancy, that's the CPA's, you know, version of what they're putting out there. Then obviously the Small Business Administrations, the 13 Code of Federal Regulations parts 120 and 121, where they talk about the new loans. So